Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast, the recap of the entire Giro d'Italia, 21 stages. Benji and I in Tirana with Luke 3 weeks ago. Feels like a lifetime ago at the beginning of May. And now, start of June, we've already got the Tour de France season kicking off. But a beautiful race, a parcours that was much maligned, including by yours truly, I think. When it was first announced in October, we thought, oh, where's the mountaintop finishes? Where's the excitement? Where's the action? And I actually think we had plenty of excitement and action, even though they didn't put a climb in the race for the first 2 weeks, which was somewhat unusual. How are you feeling mentally, physically, Benji?
Honestly, pretty great. We had a good Grand Tour. Let's be honest about it. And yes, we can talk about whether it was the parkour or the riders that made the race. I'd argue it was mostly the riders. But at the end of the day, the final of this Grand Tour was so shell-shocking. I keep using that word, but that's the feeling I had when stage 20 was over, that this Grand Tour has a positive taste, a positive aftertaste. Because at the end of the day, the last couple of stages of a Grand Tour are super important for me to how I feel about that Grand Tour. The Giro 2016 is always the one I bring up. That is the one where the last week was truly epic, and this reminded me of that a little bit. Of course, I've got nostalgic feelings to Vincenzo Nibali, the Snake of Messina. That's my nickname for him. How he won that Grand Tour, as he was my favorite rider. But despite being a bit indifferent towards Simon Yates as a rider, I was still emotional after the Finestre stage, because it was absolute cinema. It was cyclismo. It's the cycling that I love, and that's the feeling I want to have after a Grand Tour, and that's the feeling I do have. But do you have the same feeling?
Yeah, I think it was a good race. I feel, and it had like a really exciting. The reason you have these 3 week races is the hope that there's some dramatic action in the final stage. Yeah. I think the TT. I think people were comparing like the end of the 2023 Giro. To me, that wasn't that. No. It actually was a bit of a flop. That basically, nothing happened, and then you just had Roglic just won his TT. Maybe the Finestre is kind of the road version of that, but yeah, to me that was not a good Giro whatsoever. It was complete passivity. Nothing was happening, and terrible. That was a bad Giro. This one, I maybe because Mads Pedersen and versus Van Aert, or Mads Pedersen versus everybody was really interesting in the first week, and you had the big guys going for those stages. Probably they would have hoped Van der Poel was here. I think Van der Poel kind of should have been here when you see this route. But then when you see the first week of the Tour de France, you also understand why he's doing the Tour. Hopefully he is with his scaphoid injury. But yeah, I think it was a very, very good race. We'll give our overall ratings later. And it's time for how much we can remember. Which stages we forgot actually ever happened. And I'll rattle through. I'll stop on every rest day, not including the travel day on the ferry, going through the stage winners. Stage 1, from Durres to Tirana. Derek G and Timon Aaronsman get dropped. They get dropped by the sprinters. Derek G loses like a minute. I forget the time loss on this versatile sprint stage in the moderate temperatures of Albania. Wout van Aert, sick before the Giro, survives the select group, but then loses another sprint to Mads Pedersen, who takes the pink jersey and is first of many stages. Stage 2, the TT. Joshua Tarling, the heavy favourite. Can Van Aert take the pink jersey after being on 6 bonus seconds? He has a horrendous TT, collapses. Tarling wins by a mere second, and Primoz Roglic, much to his chagrin, goes into the leader's jersey after stage 2. After stage 2, Roglic looked good. He did the business on his early TT. Stage 3 was supposed to be a long climb. No one paced. No one did anything. And it was a huge group, with Mads Pedersen winning that sprint again. Trek, overall, you could see how strong their team was already, with Hola, Verona, Conrad. Stage 4 was the first real flat sprint stage. Casper Van Uden, huge upset. Coy gets it all wrong. Too late through the corner. Groves coming from too deep, and Van Uden smashes everyone after the perfect Bram Welton lead out. Matera, stage 5. Hilly sprint. Matthias Vacek could have won. Didn't win a stage this Giro, but he means Pedersen wins this stage and takes the leader's jersey back from Roglic, actually. But he did that after stage 3. And that was I like that stage. Stage 6 to Napoli, another sprint. This was the neutralized stage because of the slippery roads, and the GC guys didn't have to ride it in. Caden, we had to have one. I'm glad we got it out of the way early. Caden Groves beats everybody coming from behind with top speed. Stage 7, the first uphill finisher, 6-minute watts per kilo test. I picked Roglic. We all thought Roglic was going to do it. Juan Ayuso smashes him. Roglic doesn't even react. Del Toro's second. Probably could have won himself, but Roglic does go into the leader's jersey. First breakaway stage on stage 8 for Castel Raimondo. Luke Plapp dances away from Ulisi and Kelderman. Ulisi, though, goes into the pink jersey for just a day. And then stage 9, the Siena gravel stage, Van Aert. There's a crash. Lucas Hamilton goes down in front of Primoz Roglic and crashes half that group. Ayuso's caught up. Del Toro attacks at that moment because he thinks Egan Bernal was Ayuso.
The poor Hamilton. Everybody keeps blaming him. He was not in front of Roglic in that crash.
No,
everybody keeps saying that Roglic crashed because of Hamilton. That's not the case here, right?
Del Toro was closer to Hamilton than Roglic.
Yep.
And he made it through. So, yeah. But Del Toro does attack at this moment, thinking Bernal is his teammate Juan Ayuso. Van Aert goes with him. Bernal's there with Arensman. Huge problem for Ineos. Arensman has a mech, changes Bernal's Giro, I think. And then Del Toro goes clear, drops everybody on the Pinzuto, except Van Aert just hangs on, refuses to pull, rolls him on the flat run into, or the downhill to Siena. And there's huge GC gaps. Roglic losing big time. He's down to 10th. That was the big GC stage, Benji, of this week.
Yes, it was. And let's be honest about it. I love myself a Strade Bianche stage in a Grand Tour, especially when it had GC consequences. Yes, crashes happen, but that's also a part of cycling in such stages. So it's just an add-on of the sport. And at the end of the day, I am okay with stages like this being in a Grand Tour. And it was just epic to see Wout van Aert maybe going full circle a little bit after a real period of pressure. Let's be honest about it. The last 5 months before this race were not that great for Wout van Aert. In doing so, putting a lot of pressure on his shoulders for this Giro d'Italia, and then he's able to take that stage victory in Siena, in a Strade Bianche parcours, going all the way back to Wout van Aert cramping at Creal and Verandas Willems, whatever the team was called, on the slopes of the Siena climb, the Via Caterina climb into Siena. I'm sorry, but that felt like a full circle moment, one of the first ones of this Grand Tour as well. So that was an epic stage win, but it did lay the first grounds, the first foundations for Del Toro's lead being pretty ecstatic after week 1. And Del Toro is now in the Maglia Rosa after 9 stages with a minute 13 on his teammate, Juan Ayuso. So the perfect situation for UAE Team Emirates to be looking at after 9 stages in this Grand Tour. But overall,
on this stage, Benji, doesn't this stage, the Strade stage, make you think they need to make Strade go back to 170 Ks?
Well, we've had that argument and that opinion.
But this is the proof in the pudding. This
it
stage
is,
was
but it's
10
not
times
directly comparable.
No, of course, because maybe Poggy just goes solo anyway. But this stage was 10 times better than the last 3 editions of Strade.
I do think you're underrating the fact that half of this peloton is not necessarily the most competent Strade Bianche roads riders. Compared to, if you ride Strade Bianche, you'll have a specialized peloton with riders specifically selected to ride that race, versus here, they're specifically selected to support their leader across 21 stages, of which 1 is only the Strade Bianche stage. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it's true. You know, you got diminutive climbers here who have no business being in this peloton, I think. But I think if you're RCS and you read Mathieu van der Poel say, I'm not going to Strade because I can't be bothered because they made it way too hard, you've done yourself a disservice, and they should bring it back. Because to be honest, Luke is saying, but Luke is on Crashgate. He's saying the Strade stage was made only interesting by the crash. I agree, but you saw the problems with Red Bull, Benji. You have to expect problems on these sort of stages. You have to prepare for these problems, and UAE had decent numbers, even though there was a crash. Red Bull just were not there for Roglic.
Exactly. I will attack a defensiveless a defenseless look right now. I'm sorry, but Primoz Roglic was basically isolated before the crash already. Something would have happened towards Roglic, whether it's UAE trying to roll him in the last final of that stage. I don't think saying it was mainly because of the crash is truly correct. I think it would have opened up either way because it was already smashed after the first gravel sector, not necessarily because of crashes there. So I still think these stages have space in Grand Tour. I think it offers great stuff to see, great entertainment, that's for sure, and it offers some tactical review. And also, it maybe changes the roster of a team a little bit going into a Grand Tour, knowing that they need a rider that is quite good at this to maybe be chained to their GC leader here. But one thing that is notable, Wout van Aert was not chained to Simon Yates here. Hypothetically, in a different world, where, let's say, Visma Lease bike does not care about a stage win with Wout van Aert, would Simon Yates be able to gain time or benefit if Wout van Aert was by his side in this stage?
Maybe Del Toro would have ridden faster on his own. Maybe Van Aert would have brought Yates closer to Del Toro. So yeah, probably if Van Aert waits, then you take a bigger gap on Roglic because Trek were like attacking with Vacek and that group wasn't going to take a way bigger gap on Roglic. But to be honest, I think Yates was happy with the situation where he could just follow, where he had the teammate excuse up the road, and where it was a thinned out group. And yeah, I think Del Toro, if it was actually a fair fight, Del Toro would have won this stage. Van Aert being in his wheel and actually him then riding to take GC time meant that Del Toro didn't win this stage, but Del Toro was the strongest on this stage by far of anybody. So the problems, though, Benji mentioned, Ayuso's now got a cut in his knee. He needs stitches. He's got a bad cut in his knee. It's taking a lot of energy, apparently, to recover from. At this point, UAE do not switch, though. They still are fully tunnel visioned on Ayuso.
I disagree. For me, they are on both, even from this point onwards. And we'll get to the Monte Grappa stage and so forth. For me, they're still focused on both here. They see Del Toro as an opportunity, but don't see him as a certainty, while they see Ayuso as the more certain choice, but with the vulnerability of the knee problem. Because a knee problem, a lot of people will be like, oh, you've got a small cut on your knee, bro, get over it. That's not really how that works. The body takes energy and uses that energy to spend that energy on trying to heal the position of that wound on your body. I'm not a doctor, but that's how it was explained by many people during this Grand Tour. So it's not just, okay, he's got a cut on his leg that hurts. That takes energy from what you'd want to spend on your actual cycling behavior towards healing your body. And as a consequence, that can take away stuff in the next week. But guide us through the next week, Patrick. What happens after the Siena stage?
Stage 10, huge upset. Trek can't stop winning. They win their fourth stage. Dan Hauler wins a TT. Huge weather changes during this, including every 5 minutes. We see Derek G, Roglic, Simon Yates do excellent time trials. Ayuso, less than we expected. And Del Toro, actually a bad TT relative to what we expected, but they had the worst of the weather. And so Roglic is moving up. Stage 11 to Castelnuovo Nemonti. This is why I think UAE were kind of on Ayuso, because this is a stage that Del Toro should have won, could have taken more time, especially when you see what happened on Le Mot on the other stages. But they were riding passively to try and nurse Ayuso back into the race, which maybe that's a fair strategy. You don't want to make it hard, so you have your second leader recover. In the end, that didn't happen, but here they were setting a steady tempo. They weren't going to do anything. I can't remember what happened on San Pellegrino. The longest climb. Nothing.
Yates was dropped a little bit, but it looked more like he was pacing himself than actually getting hard dropped on that climb. What happened on San Pellegrino was that Bernal attacked.
Bernal went.
And Del Toro jumped to the wheel, and then...
Ayuso jumped.
No, Ayuso jumped to the wheel, and Del Toro reacted by jumping to the wheel of Ayuso. So we had a discussion about that on the podcast, but not really influential. At the end of the day, I could see your argument that they were nursing Ayuso to the finish line. I just see this as they're trying to keep the status quo, as in they're trying to keep Del Toro in the position he is, and they're trying to keep Ayuso in the position he is, in the hopes that they have two candidate winners going into week 3, where they both have potential question marks. Because let's be honest about it. We can say all we want after week 3, but in week 2, Del Toro has question marks and Ayuso has question marks. This week 3 that was upcoming is a multi-mountain stage Grand Tour week 3 where there's so much climbing. Del Toro's never done that at this level in his life. That's something we need to keep in mind here. Rationally, it's logical to not have 100% confidence in him before a week like that. He could literally collapse on the first mountain stage. And well, he did a little bit on San Valentina, but we'll get to that. When it comes to Ayuso, the question mark is he's somewhat injured after that Siena stage, but on top of that, he's also not necessarily the most proven rider on a week 3 like that. So there's question marks for both riders, and to be honest, I can understand that they want to keep both in GC until week 3, and they want to keep the status quo. Yes, there were a few opportunities to gain time with Del Toro, though, that they shouldn't necessarily have chained as much. But let's go to stage 12 here. The first victory of a Visma labber that is not Wout van Aert.
Olaf Koy wins a flat sprint. Not too much to say about it. Stage 13 was the uphill sprint. Mads Pedersen goes long, dusts off Wout van Aert, who can't come around him. And there's a few GC gaps. Del Toro came third, so I think very strong uphill sprint. Remy Rochas fourth, just quietly. We saw Pellizzari and Yates, Adam, that is, lose a little bit of time. Stage 15, long mountain stage. This is the one where, stage 15, Carlos Verona wins, but he just out-attritioned everybody. This is where Roglic, because he crashed on stage 14. Oh, I've skipped stage 14. Kasper Asgreen wins. I skipped the second most pivotal GC stage in the first 2 weeks. The Slovenian finish, not a Slovenian dream for Primoz Roglic. It started raining a little bit. They entered the city circuit. Kasper Asgreen wasn't able to be caught back by the chasing peloton. Visma chased all day. They chased through some city streets, but Lemon taking all risks, and there was a crash behind. And a lot of guys were caught up. Del Toro was on the ground. He crashed himself, and he managed to get back up and get back on to the lead group. But yeah, Pellizzari, Bernal, Roglic, Arensman, Ayuso, they all lose nearly a minute. And Roglic has crashed again. And the next stage, he paid for it. He gets dropped on... he looked bad on the grappa. He gets dropped on the dory. They made him go sleeping with the fishes. And that's the Giro d'Italia pretty much over for Primoz Roglic, losing, I don't know. He lost a minute 30. It's not like that much, but it's also, you're done at that point.
Yeah, because it's not like he's only lost a minute and a half by now. It's every single stage of the last week. He's basically lost time. So in total, that's enough to be out of contention, was our opinion after the stage. But the one thing we need to talk about on this stage is Monte Grappa, because that's where something happens. UAE does something that is questionable. And that questionable thing is the following. So there's an attack by, I think, Bernal. Maybe Carapaz follows and Del Toro follows. Those three go up the road in my head. And then in the descent of the Monte Grappa, we see UAE chasing for Ayuso, chasing behind the group of Del Toro, Carapaz, and Bernal. And I want to ask your opinion before I give mine. What do you think of the situation? We've said it after that stage. What do you think about it now?
Yeah, we said it after the stage. We said, don't be the first person to chase your leader in pink. Now, you may want to control the situation later if it's, but first,
yes,
it's Simon Yates' problem. Second, it's whoever else is in that Roglic problem. It's Visma's problem. It's BORA's problem. Why do you just do it straight away for them before even especially looking at that finish, Benji, what if they have to start pulling literally themselves? Simon Yates didn't have good climbing support here. So what if he has to actually pull on the dory himself? Then you have an opportunity for Ayuso to actually do something, to attack later. So I think it was way too early to just start solving the problems of those guys, especially when it's the pink jersey. Why can't he take more time? Yeah. So in hindsight, it looks even worse.
I've got a balanced opinion on this. Where I fully agree that when you're in that situation, you're in the second group and Del Toro's up ahead with Bernal and Carapaz and Del Toro's in the pink jersey, your first reaction is, Red Bull, BORA, hansgrohe needs to solve that first. Roglic is there. He's on paper still in the game. We don't know at that point that he's feeling shit. Maybe UAE smelled that. That's a possibility. On the other side, Visma Lease bike is still in the game. It's on them to start closing it. So you got to give this opportunity to others first before you blink first. And UAE blinked first from the get-go. Immediately, UAE blinked first and they started chasing. That is the mistake for me. I do think the reaction to the stage a little bit overblown. I am of the opinion that it is logical at this point in the race. Do you agree with that? That it's logical at this point in the race that you don't 100% trust Del Toro for week 3?
Yeah, sure. So, do you think he's going to get dropped on 5% if he sits on the wheel of Carapaz on Dory?
No, but if Carapaz, Bernal, and Del Toro get X amount of time,
that's
you
not
trust
going to
them
happen
against Carapaz and GC.
That's not going to happen. Because what's going to happen is Del Toro will start sitting on the wheel. You've made Carapaz work all in the valley. You've made Yates and co work all in the before. It's a long valley, and then it's like long climbs, but draft matters a lot. The
Were
gap
there satellite riders ahead? I don't remember.
I can't remember. But UAE had numbers. They had McNulty.
That's the thing.
This would never have got out of their control. So that's why I'm like, you have to let the situation play out a bit and flip it and be like, okay, how can we take more time?
It was an opportunity to put pressure on other teams to do the work for them. And if it got out of control, they could have jumped in themselves anyway, is basically the take we've landed on.
Yeah. So they were thinking glass. They were thinking, I don't know what's scarcity mindset, like just conserve.
Yeah.
I think they were stuck in like the Jumbo. We'll speak about the parallels. Maraggi and Eddie brought it up initially. He spoke about this is like the revenge for Planche de Belfi 2020. That they reminded me of the Jumbo Visma like super defensive mindset of the 2020 Tour de France, where they just never tried to take any time. And maybe nothing happens on this stage and they all just finish on the same time anyway. Maybe you have two leaders against a completely isolated group of 7 or 8 GC riders with no teammates, and you can start attacking with Del Toro. I don't know. But they never let it get to that. And that's, I think, the criticism of this stage. Then there's a second rest day. We thought Roglic wouldn't start stage 16, the hardest stage of the race, I think overall almost, to San Valentino. He does start. He crashes again in a roundabout with Carapaz. Carapaz seems okay, but Roglic just abandons the race. Scaroni wins this from the breakaway with Fortunato, sealing KOM, sealing a glorious Giro for Astana with points, wins, yada, yada, yada. And on the, we start to see Simon Yates on the Santa Barbara. He throws in a dig. He's on the second last climb, and then Wout van Aert was in the breakaway. He pulls the first part of San Valentino. It's not that steep, thins it out, and then on the steep second, third, Yates attacks. I think the indication, Benji, because I've seen a lot of talk that Yates he didn't do anything all Giro, which also would be fine if you still win, but he attacked for 4 minutes here, full. And was just with Carapaz and Del Toro on the wheel, and then Carapaz countered. Clearly, Yates thought he had something in the legs here.
Probably. Like, up to this point in the Grand Tour, we've seen Simon Yates just be consistent. Consistent and not crash. That's an important factor as well. He has not been a part of the Strade crash. He has not been a part of the Wet City crash in Nova Gorica. He has not been a part of any crash in this Grand Tour, to my knowledge, up to that point. And outside of that, consistently, he was not losing time. And that's an important factor. Like, winning a Grand Tour, it's great if you win a couple of mountain stage, but if you lose 20 minutes on one of the days, you're not going to make it. Simon Yates knows that from 2018. So consistency is king to stay up there in GC, and that's what he did this entire Grand Tour up to this point. And this is where he started attacking on the terrain that fits him. San Valentino multi-mountain stage, and later Colle del Finestre and so forth. We'll get to that. But was the first signs for me that, okay, Simon Yates' podium is on? I'm not sure about him winning yet, because Carapaz looked like the favorite right now, in my opinion.
Carapaz steps off him when he stops his attack. He dances away and no one can respond. Derek G goes into the middle, actually. Derek G takes time on Yates and Del Toro. And this was also where we saw the Del Toro was, because I think Yates was in second at this time. Del Toro was just focused on Yates, nobody else, because Yates was in second. And then Simon Yates begins a stop-start attacking Del Toro, and Del Toro actually, he cracks. He does have a crack here because he gets dropped then by guys coming from behind. He loses big time to Carapaz. He loses a minute 36. Somewhat the justification for what Benji was saying, that UAE couldn't just rely on him. I mean, the first high mountain stage, he gets cooked. But this is the only mountaintop finish in the race.
Crazy, huh?
And so that's the thing. It's like, okay, he loses 130, but it's the only mountaintop finish left. I mean, Finestra's not a mountaintop finish. And Del Toro loses time, still keeps the jersey, but he's 26 seconds ahead of Simon Yates. Carapaz is now fully in the mix on 31 seconds. It looks now like a 3-horse race. And but we don't really have any we don't have any serious like climbs, like uphill finishes the next day. The next day we have the Bormio stage. Del Toro wins with a late solo. Carapaz was the initiator though. He went on the La Motte climb. It was slow paced. Then Del Toro whacked it. Carapaz starts to relay when he sees Simon Yates isn't there, and Del Toro drops him on the descent. Poor Bardet got caught. Bardet was going to win the stage from the breakaway. Yeah, it was sad. Stage 18 was the transition stage. Instead of a sprint, Nico Denz won from a small group of Fuga de la Fuga de la Fuga. It was chill stage. Stage 19, high mountain stage. Again, not a pure mountaintop finish. Del Toro and Carapaz, they dance away. They explode away from Yates on a 4K 5% sort of climb. Prodom wins from the breakaway, very, very strong after a hard pace settle day. And Simon Yates has somewhat of a blow up after the stage, saying he seemed very defeated, saying the team didn't execute the plan that was agreed in the morning, and then everyone thinks 2-horse race.
Yeah, but I still don't understand what Simon Yates meant with that, because at the end of the day, the way I saw the Visma Lease bike strategy that day, we saw Visma Lease bike domestiques coming out of the breakaway and also from the peloton, hard pacing the climbs in the way that EF does. What else can you even do on a climb like this, on a stage like this? It's putting in fatigue to try and put pressure on Del Toro for me. So I never really understand what he meant with that, and that moves us into the
Visma just didn't have a good
stage.
Visma had no climbing team here.
Well, I actually think they did relatively okay with the riders they had.
Yeah, but they had no one. UAE had 3 domestiques climbing at a better level. Micah.
Wout van Aert's going to disagree with that on the next climbing stage.
Yeah, but you're right. It's like, well, there's no Sepp Kuss to set like an infernal pace to launch anything. It's not in the race.
Exactly, and Adam Yates wasn't as converted as a twin to already start riding for the competition.
Adam Yates, by the way,
imagine.
Stage 16, Adam Yates pulled full gas when he came back to Del Toro on a flatter section behind Simon Yates.
Yep.
Stage 20, the big stage of the race, to Sestriere, huge breakaway goes up the road. Van Aert's in it. It's not EF start to control when it gets to 10 minutes because UAE were letting the brake just go out and out and out. We get to Finestra. EF do a crazy lead out at the beginning. Yates doesn't react. Del Toro and Carapaz hyperfixate on each other. Yates dances away, breaks the record on Finestra, gets to Van Aert at the top. Del Toro and Carapaz, angry with each other, just give up completely at the top of Finestra, and Simon Yates wins the Giro by taking like 5 minutes on that group who wait for McNulty and co to come from behind. Chris Harper wins the stage, his first World Tour race. Crazy finish to the Giro. Coy wins the final sprint in Rome. But this Finestra stage, Benji, I mean, where do you rank this in our podcast coverage? Like all the stages we've ever covered.
Ooh, it's hard to really remember every single one we've done, but it's definitely up there, because I think viewing figures wise, this is probably our biggest Giro d'Italia stage ever with the podcast. So it looks like the entertainment factor for the audience was also there. People were invested in this stage, and the shocking twist at the end, that's what people tune in for. Also, a lot of people on the internet, on social media, are super hyped after that stage and are saying this is one of the best Giros they've ever seen. So this stage was a major factor to that, because at the end of the day, if Del Toro just survives, it's not going to have that factor, that X factor of a Grand Tour. It's the plot twist that makes it. And for me, it ranks pretty damn high, I would say. And I said it before, I've got no emotional investment in Simon Yates, but I was emotional after that stage because it's just such a good stage of cycling, no?
Yeah. Well, yeah, this stage recap has more views than the Combloux TT in the Tour de France 2 years ago, which somewhat surprising to me. So clearly for everybody, it was a crazy stage, and indeed it was fantastic to watch. Strange to watch, fantastic to watch, and that's, I think, what we got to talk about. Benji, you have it in the note. I'll do the final rankings. Simon Yates wins GC by 3:56 ahead of Isaac Del Toro, 4:43 on Carapaz in third, Derek G on 6:23, Caruso fifth. You're welcome. Damiano Caruso fifth. I actually don't know how that happened. I didn't see him on screen on TV for 3 weeks. So shout out to Damiano Caruso. Giulio Pellizzari, 6th, a breakout if he didn't break out last year. Bernal 7th, Rubio 8th, McNulty 9th, Stora 10th, and close gaps between 7th and 10th, I would say. Points jersey, Pedersen wins it by a landslide, of course. KOM, Fortunato wins by an even bigger landslide. Scaroni 2nd, so Astana also take a lot of UCI points for that. It's the same as winning a stage. Del Toro wins the white jersey, of course, and UAE win the team's classification, which also stopped them winning the overall race. So that's the segue to, seriously, that's the segue to, what could UAE have done differently, Benji? You mentioned Grappa. What would you have done differently?
Well, we've mentioned Monte Grappa, but I think my biggest tactical flaw in UAE Team Emirates in this race is how they approach stage 20 to begin with and the overall leadership of this Grand Tour. Because let's talk about McNulty's role in this race for a second. And it's not just, I don't blame McNulty personally for this. It's a team that allows him to do this. He gets a free roll.
Giving him, he's an adult, Benji.
I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, if you are Brandon McNulty and in the race your team tells you that he can ride for a top 10 in GC, then he can ride for a top 10 in GC. That's people management to me. And to me, it seems like UAE Team Emirates is giving these free rolls to potential leaders in the team to make everyone happy. But that does not make everyone happy. That should not make everyone happy. Because at the end of the day, McNulty riding for his top 10 position, because he only rode for Ayuso and Del Toro twice in this entire Grand Tour. Twice! In 21 stages. That's nothing. I'm sorry.
Which stages?
So, in the Strade Bianchi stage, he rode for
Strada,
himself too.
Strada, he rode. He rode. Because he was crashed and injured.
And there's one more stage, but I can't actually remember which one it was, but he did ride for Del Toro at least once in this Grand Tour, but only twice in total. That's nothing. That's because at the end of the day, when someone attacks Del Toro, McNulty doesn't react to try and save Del Toro or anything. He starts riding his own tempo to make sure he doesn't blow up following that attack because he wants to keep his top 10 position. What I'm trying to say is McNulty's free roll to ride for his top 10 negatively impacts Isaac Del Toro's chances to win this Grand Tour because McNulty, like you have mentioned multiple times, is now too close in GC to be allowed in the breakaway, but also on top of that is prioritizing his own top 10 over Del Toro in certain places in this Grand Tour. And thus the strategy of giving these free rolls to leaders, multiple leaders in a Grand Tour like this, to me, does not make everyone happy. Because at the end of the day, Del Toro should not be happy after this Grand Tour about the fact that other people's top 10 free rolls negatively impact him. What are your thoughts?
I think it's fair enough to go into a race with free rolls. And if you go into the race and Brandon McNulty and Del Toro were probably on the same hierarchy. Ayuso was number 1, but then there was the Bs. And if Adam Yates then was really good, maybe he would have, they were all on a flat hierarchy. But you have to be like, okay, guys, but if someone has the chance to win the race, and it's not talking about, if Del Toro is 5th, and 6th starts attacking him, and McNulty's 9th, I wouldn't give a fuck. Like then it's like defend your own spots, whatever. Del Toro's got the chance to win the race. You have to sit down on the second rest day and say, Brandon, whatever reason you have for riding for this top 10, because also, like, who cares? What would have been more, like, giving him more notoriety, more like fame? Imagine Brandon McNulty saved his Del Toro's GC by pulling behind Van Aert after Finestra. He would be famous forever. He'd never have to buy a drink in Mexico when he's on holiday for the rest of his life. Seriously.
It's true.
Instead, I fully agree with you. You have a Tobias Foss top 10 in the Giro GC. Like, congrats.
I don't know what I would do in that position, but I'd like to believe I wouldn't be fighting for a top 10 position if I was Brandon McNulty.
But yeah, the team has to, because the team has to come and sort it out, because that's like Mike is trying to keep it all together.
Yeah.
Vine started the Giro with 50 race days, and then he got sick. Like Vine
36. Close enough.
How many?
36 or something. I counted yesterday.
Did he? Oh, fair enough. My math's a bit off, yeah. Yeah, but Vine was the one doing all the dirty work in the first 10 days, keeping the team out of trouble. Arietta came on. Yeah, so there you go. I just think that was really, really strange how that was approached. Because Adam Yates clearly was like, okay, I'm out of GC. I'll just do my job. I don't give a shit about defending top 10.
Because it actually impacts stage 20 here. If McNulty's not fighting for his top 10 position, then he's the perfect rider to go in the breakaway.
Yeah.
But he's too close in GC to go in the breakaway, because other teams won't be happy seeing that McNulty in the breakaway, because then the 9th place in GC will start pacing, the 8th place in GC will start pacing, and the breakaway won't get the gap necessary, which, to be honest, that's also a strategy. It's also a strategy to even put McNulty in this situation in the breakaway to make other teams control the breakaway and make sure, because just to be clear, what we're trying to sketch is going into stage 20, UAE should be thinking this. And we said it the day before. Visma, Lease and EF Education first will try to put a rider in the breakaway in the hopes that that breakaway makes it over Colle del Finestre in front of their GC riders. Because then they have someone to pull Carapaz or Simon Yates all the way from the top of Finestre to Sestriere, which that is the moment where Del Toro might not have that. And if Del Toro is dropped by those two riders, then we saw what happened. Wout van Aert and Simon Yates pace away straight into the future. That being said, there's two ways UAE could counter this. Either they send a defensive satellite rider into the breakaway. It doesn't even have to be McNulty, to be honest. It could have been Igor Arietta. He's been climbing better than Wout van Aert.
Baroncini's climbing well.
Yeah, true. Then again, I would prefer Arietta.
But then the gap would go out to the break.
Yeah, and if you've got Arietta in that breakaway, then fine if it gets 10 minutes. Yes, Simon Yates has Wout van Aert over the top, but you at least have Arietta as a defensive satellite rider over the top as well, which kind of evens out the playing field a little bit. Arietta is not a Wout van Aert, but you get my points. The second the second option for UAE is doing the opposite, which is controlling the breakaway to make sure it doesn't have 10 minutes by the foot of Finestre. Because if Wout van Aert in the breakaway arrive at the foot of Finestre with 7 minutes, Wout van Aert is not getting to the top in front of Simon Yates. And that's the reality. And they did neither of it. And yes, we found it funny that UAE wasn't following the wheel of the EF riders on the Colle del Lease climb in the middle of that stage. But in hindsight, they probably should have followed them. If not, they should have been helping them control this breakaway. Because if the gap was smaller, Wout van Aert does not get to the top in front of Simon Yates.
Yeah, I didn't really understand it, but because also
that's my biggest problem.
They were controlling, and then EF came to control the break, and they just stopped. They were like, "Oh, thanks." It's like, bruh, Baroncini should be helping fucking Asgreen. What are you doing? Like,
yeah.
And so that I think once. Then it became out. Once it got to Finestre, it's kind of out of their hands because like Carapaz is going to do what he's going to do. Del Toro's got a tricky situation. I also think like Del Toro he got caught in the worst of the middle ground on Finestre. In the Carapaz like he didn't react straight on the wheel, but he did react and he did ride away from his teammates at the bottom of a 1 hour climb. He could have just sat behind. He's like, okay, I'm going to do the first 5Ks of this climb. Micah and Yates are going to pace me full. Or Simon Yates even. That's risky. It's risky. But yeah, they were tunnel vision on Carapaz, and because they said they only told Del Toro once that he might have to pull on Finestra during the climb.
That's ridiculous. That being said, if I look at the entire final here, just to finalize our point from earlier, in my opinion, if Wout van Aert is not over the top and Simon Yates is alone there, and Del Toro and Carapaz go over the top 17 seconds, I think it was behind, virtually the Maglia Rosa over the top. So in total, that's a minute, was it 2 minutes 07 or something that they came over the top, or 1 minute 47, whatever it was, over the top. So Del Toro was virtually behind the Maglia Rosa. Simon Yates on top of Finestre was maybe like 20 seconds. If that happens without Wout van Aert ahead, then I'm sorry, but Simon Yates might not win the Giro d'Italia. So for me, that breakaway formation and control is already the biggest problem of this entire Grand Tour, and that is 100% a team management issue. That is a team car issue. That is a tactics issue. Now, to follow you with your point here, I agree Del Toro did not ride the perfect Colle del Finestre. I am still of the opinion that he was on his limit for the second half on the gravel sector, because when the virtual Maglia Rosa switches Del Goro, that's a new rider, Del Toro goes to the front and he tries to set tempo, but he's riding slower than when Carapaz was pacing earlier. So you would ride faster if you're really trying to pace yourself, you know?
Exactly. Like at some point he just had to, and that's where I also don't get, like, isn't the problem that Yates is a minute 50, 2 minutes ahead, or 20 seconds virtually ahead on GC, bigger than the theoretical risk that Carapaz might roll you by 40 seconds on Sestriere? Like, you have to accept that might happen. It might happen.
Where are we in the stage when you say that?
Halfway Finestra.
Okay, sure. I agree there.
But even after, like, at the top, or last the gravel on Finestra, wherever, like, Del Toro's worried about Carapaz rolling, and I get it, because Carapaz will try it. He literally attacked, like, if you, and he will attack you from behind, but Sestriere is not that hard. 40 seconds is a big gap. You have to run that risk, rather than just accepting defeat is obviously worse.
That's true. For me, the way I look at it is this in phases. On the Colle del Finestre climb, in the first half, to me, Del Toro was scared of spending much energy, because he was fearful that in the second half of the climb, he would get countered. In the second half of the climb, he should definitely pace if he can. I think in the last portion of the climb, he couldn't. That he was on his limit, in my personal opinion. But over the top, that's where decisions are made. Carapaz says to himself, okay, I'm over the top here. Simon Yates, Maglia Rosa in his pocket. I'm not passing him anymore at this point. He's got Wout van Aert. So me as Carapaz over the top of Finestre, I think to myself, what is my pathway to second place now? Because I've lost my second place virtually. Okay, and the only solution I can find is forcing Del Toro to do the pacing and trying to attack him on Sestriere to drop him. In doing so, taking second place from him instead of trying to find a way to win the race anymore. Because Carapaz after Finestre, his race is over for the victory. 100%. He has to now ride and try and secure second, which is to try and beat Del Toro. I don't have any issue with Carapaz not riding after the top of Finestre and trying to attack Del Toro on Sestriere. The thing people are discussing a lot on social media in the last 3 days, and we've discussed it on the podcast as well, is Isaac Del Toro after the top of Finestre. What Del Toro does here, to me, seems like, okay, I have the virtual second place right now. The Maglia Rosa virtually is riding up the road. I will not risk my virtual second place for a small chance of catching Simon Yates and the Maglia Rosa from this point onwards. In doing so, I'm defending my virtual second place to Carapaz. I think that's the thought process there. I would have I think it's early. I agree with you. That's very early to do just over the top of Finestre. But I think that's the thought process. And what do you think of my opinion that if a 32-year-old GC rider that's podiumed the Grand Tour before thinks this, I would heavily question it and I would criticize it. Because you've podiumed the Grand Tour before, you should be going all out for the victory then. That's my opinion. But I understand the position of Del Toro.
No, but it's still podium.
It's still podium, but second versus third for him matters more than it matters for me. Me as a viewer, I don't care. But I can imagine he does.
Bonus still gets triggered.
Bonus still gets triggered, but it's the biggest result of any Mexican rider all time in a Grand Tour.
Yeah, but I don't know. To not try to win or save the win at all.
I would have liked to see it later.
Because you might get rolled for second. Maybe. I don't know. Would 21-year-old Pog have done it?
I don't know. I don't actually remember vividly the Vuelta of 2019, but I actually think he went on a long solo.
Pog was because he's a savage.
Plataforma de Grados?
Yeah. Like Pog in the 2020 Tour de France, I guarantee he was mad after the crosswinds because he's like, fuck, this makes it harder for me to win this race.
Of course.
Yeah, like that's how he is. I don't know. It wouldn't have made a difference. Van Aert made the difference. I thought it was strange this on the descent where it really doesn't require any effort. Like maybe he could have tried to drop Carapaz. You know, he dropped Carapaz on 2 descents the previous stage. It was strange to see. But of course, with Van Aert up the road, the damage was already done.
I see that, and I agree that it's early to give up in the descent of the Finestre already. But I personally see both his age, the fact that it's first Grand Tour as a GC leader. He wants to get the highest possible result. He doesn't believe in Maglia Rosa anymore from this point onward. I don't know. I can understand his position. I don't know what I would have done in his place. I'm not a pro cyclist, so obviously I have no right to talk in that sense.
I would have crashed myself really hard on that double right-hander on the Finestre descent in like the 4th or 5th corner. I would have crashed into that wall really hard.
Broke your back again.
Yeah, I would have fucked myself up. That's what I would have done. Seriously.
Thought he would have saved you.
But on that note, like, I don't know, because Yates nearly crashes.
Yeah.
Yates nearly crashes himself on that descent. You never know. So
I just feel like there's a lot of people that are talking shit about Del Toro right now that are in an easy position to talk.
No, I've also never seen him. I've never seen Maglia Rosa ride like that on the final mountain stage of it. You ever seen the leader of the Jersey literally refuse to chase at any point the guy who's taking the Giro away from him?
Well, he was chasing in multiple moments. He was chasing when the virtual Maglia Rosa switches. He was pacing on the gravel sector of Finestre from that point onwards for 2-3 minutes until he stopped because he realized that he doesn't have the legs anymore. And over the top, he was pacing in the descent. He was actually dropping Carapaz for a bit in the descent.
You think he did the Finestre as like just a TT?
I don't believe he did the Finestre as a TT, but I believe he was on his limit at the end.
Yeah, of course, but I don't know. He just needed to do a TT like Derek G did.
Because, like, we're saying we've never seen a Maglia Rosa ride like this. When have we ever seen a Maglia Rosa in this situation?
I mean, yeah, leader's jersey in general. Like what, being attacked?
Yeah, but in a Grand Tour is different than a 1-week race, eh?
Yeah.
I can't vividly remember a similar scenario like this where a guy that shows up in his first Grand Tour as a GC leader has to make a decision whether he defends his virtual second Maglia Rosa, virtual second versus trying to have a small chance of getting Maglia Rosa in the final. I would love to see him go all out and even lose his podium and set the setup for a great story in the long term. But I can in some way understand his position. And I know that I'm probably not having the most popular opinion on this because the most popular opinion on social media is shitting on Isaac Del Toro right now.
I really think he had a brain fade and just tunnel vision on Carapaz. I don't think he was doing... I think they were just real, and that's also not his fault. And so where I agree with you is, it shouldn't be his decision. He's not doing... On Finestre, Isaac Del Toro shouldn't have the like the virtual standings on a printout screen next to him, seeing where it's moving, doing the mental maths. It's a bit much to expect for him on the Finestra, I think. You got to say, okay, Isaac, when the gap goes...
Yeah, but he doesn't have to think about that much on Finestra either. He has to think about, there's two riders right now. Yeah, but
Benji, he's coachable. Why he's also so good is I think he's coachable, and he got told Carapaz is the threat. If you stick with Carapaz and don't get dropped on Finestra, you will win the Giro d'Italia. Probably was what was said before the stage.
I do not blame Isaac Del Toro that much for this Grand Tour.
And then you have to tell him
team management.
When Yates is on... Okay, I think Yates being up the road could, in theory, be a good thing. Okay, stops the attacking phase for a bit of two guys rolling you. And then when Yates gets to 25 seconds and Carapaz slowed, you can't let G ride. He had to start riding. He had to start riding, and they had to tell him, set a pace. If Carapaz attacks you, ignore it. TT to the top, and you see where it is. So
you don't think he was on the limit on the climb?
Benji, they were track standing.
Muchin said he was on the limit.
They were track standing. Derek G would come back. Carapaz would drop a bomb, and Del Toro snapped onto the wheel and could respond.
Then why on the second half of the climb does he only pace for 2 minutes after the virtual Maya Rosa switches and does not ride faster than Carapaz did?
Because he was just focused on Carapaz.
I don't believe that. I do not believe that.
I don't know. I'm talking earlier in the climb, though. Should have just been setting a pace. But maybe he was on the limit and couldn't pull. But
because it's logical that he's not on the limit.
Yeah, but
it's logical that he's on the limit.
Yeah, but Carapaz was not riding a steady pace on the gravel. He attacked him at the end, and he followed easily.
He followed.
The gap went to 2 minutes to 2:05, and then Carapaz hits him again with like a long attack, and it goes to 140, and he's in the wheel with a change of pace.
I think he was on his limit.
Maybe in that case, he couldn't do more. But they were track standing, G coming past, etc. G was pacing the start of the gravel. I think he could go faster than Derek G, personally.
Well, if that's the case, then he should know better.
Yeah.
Well, we can say that, but
it wouldn't have mattered. It actually wouldn't have mattered. By the time they actually got to the gravel, in hindsight, it was done already. Because Yates, they're not going to catch him by the top. And even if Yates got to Van Aert with a 25-second lead, it would have been done. So it's like you said, I mean, me and you, it's been good to discuss this at length. Well, should Del Toro have done this? Should he have done that on Finestra? In the end, like you said, the damage was done in brake formation.
UAE Team Emirates' team management failed in brake formation, and that's how he lost the Giro, in my opinion. Because at the end of the day, if Wout van Aert does not make it over the top of Finestre, there's still a realistic chance that Del Toro wins this Grand Tour. But with the added bonus of, if we think about that exact moment for a second, Simon Yates goes over the top. I don't know the exact time gap. Del Toro and Carapaz go over the top 2 minutes behind him. 17 seconds, I think, is the virtual gap in the Maglia Rosa. That Simon Yates is ahead over the top of Finestre. Carapaz will still sit in the wheel. So Del Toro will have to do most of the work alone in the valley anyway. Because Carapaz will logically say to himself, okay, I can't win anymore, so I need to benefit off Del Toro. Or do you still see Carapaz riding with Del Toro in the valley in that situation?
No, Carapaz wouldn't have ridden with him in the valley, probably.
I don't think so either.
But
so it would have been Del Toro versus Simon Yates, which on the flat you'd give the benefit to Del Toro. It depends on how hard you were on the limit on the climb before, though, because it's not that simple after a climb like Finestre.
Yeah. I mean, you just have to accept possibly losing second to save winning the race. I think. But yeah, without a satellite rider, it was even if you did pull, it wouldn't have mattered.
I would prefer most riders to do exactly that. I would literally every GC leader in that position, I would want to risk their second place, because at the end of the day, worst case is third place. But somewhere I can understand the position that Isaac is in and why he would choose the other option. That being said, if the decision came from the team car and not from Isaac, then I think that's a team management issue again, which That's why this entire discussion, I blame the team car.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. What next for him, though? I mean, on a positive note for him, it's a breakout GC performance, second in his second Grand Tour at 21 years old. He's in his second professional season, and he also could have won 3 stages here. He's a top rider. Just overall, he's not too small. He can TT, he can punch, he can sprint, he can ride the gravel. He's an all-round rider. Very exciting to watch. What's next for him, Benji? PCS says Tour of Austria. I dare say that should be a little bit below his level, but if he goes to Tour of Austria, bro, what the fuck?
That's a joke. Like,
it can't it's like even Brennan, in hindsight, Brennan doing those university student French .2 races. It's deplorable.
I don't expect Del Toro to ride 2 Grand Tours this season, so I expect him at the Italian Classics.
Giannetti said no. He said they have to give space to other GC riders for the Vuelta.
Italian Classics.
Yeah, Lombardia, all of them.
Yep, exactly. Giro del Veneto.
Well, the thing is, though, if you don't do the Tour of Vuelta as a GC rider, it's pretty thin rest of the year.
Sibiu Tour, my friend.
That's where he started as his first good professional performance on Balier-Lac.
Exactly.
Yeah, but what else would he do?
That, Avenir and then Tour Down Under, buddy. Come on. Forged in the deep ends of Australia.
Yeah, exactly. If you can win there, you can win anywhere. I think he should do, San Sebastian, Poland he can win. He's still, great result here, but he's got to, win a World Tour 1 week race. Is still a good goal for him. He hasn't done it yet, so he should do that. So Poland, San Sebastian, Poland, and then Italian Classics could be pretty exciting for him. World Championships, why not?
Are we missing a
World
Tour 1 week race in the second half of the season?
Yeah. If you're a GC rider and you don't do the Vuelta, you have no World Tour stage race where there's a decent climb in it for 3-4 months, unless you go to China.
Then again, if I'm Isaac Del Toro, I probably deserve the next 2 months off to relax after this Giro and all the shit he's been through in the last month, to then slowly prepare for Lombardia. I also see that as a solution.
They'll put him in Swiss, I reckon.
Wouldn't surprise me. Gotta get those UCI points, buddy.
Gotta get the UCI points. You gotta get them. Okay, so Del Toro, we think he's going to be pretty good in the future. What's next for Juan Ayuso?
Wow.
I know.
Hot take.
Groundbreaking analysis. What next for Juan Ayuso? Does he have a future at UAE Team Emirates? Because this is now, he is also, he is only 1 year older than Isaac Del Toro. This was his 4th Grand Tour he started, 2nd DNF in a row. He podiumed the Vuelta 4 seasons ago in 2022 as a teenager.
Crazy.
But it's not been smooth sailing since, in the Grand Tours, that is. He clearly stepped up to me in Fondrome, Trofeo La Guelia winning, Tirreno winning easily, Catalunya looking like he was going to win, then he capitulated on the Barcelona stage. He was the strongest in the first uphill finish here, good TT, then it all went bad, to be honest.
It's true. When I look at Juan Ayuso, I'm still a believer. I'm still a believer that Juan Ayuso can podium Grand Tours, can potentially win a Grand Tour in his career. I still see him as that rider. He's shown the talent as a rider. He's only 22 years old. Yes, his best GC result was in 2022, podiuming La Vuelta. The next year he got 4th. It's like people forget that he podiumed La Vuelta before. I've heard stuff spoken about, he can't do shit in week 3 of a Grand Tour. My man podiumed the Grand Tour before. Let's not forget that. And that was behind Remco Evenepoel and Enric Mas, but I think Mas has podiumed multiple Grand Tours as well. So it's not like he's getting beaten by farmers. So at the end of the day, that's a solid, damn good GC result at the age of, what was it, 2019 maybe? So
19.
That shows talent. My problem with this is that I feel like UAE has come to the point where, with Isaac Del Toro added to the list, they've got too many riders in that bundle. We've got Pogacar obviously as the
apex
predator.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
Pog. What's your tier list of their GC guys? You got Pog on top, I guess.
Yes, I have Pog on top. Oh, this is a difficult one because if we sketch them out for a second, you've got Adam Yates, you've got Joao Almeida.
But this is the problem, Benji. There's no clear argument to separate the guys in the next tier.
Yeah, there's no clear argument. You've got Adam Yates, Juan Ayuso, Joao Almeida, and Isaac Del Toro. Those are the 4 riders under Tadej Pogacar. If I look at those 4 riders, Almeida had a great season this year. I can't wait to see what he does at the Tour de France. I would have preferred to see him at the Giro, actually. That's my opinion. Then again, I'm not sure how that would have went. On the Nova Gorica stage, he would have lost 2 minutes.
If Almeida didn't crash, he would have killed everybody.
Level-wise, I think so as well, actually.
Yeah.
And you're also mending your relationship with the Portuguese people after the other day.
It's not my fault Almeida rode 30% of the time Ayuso did on the front on Galibier, and then threw his arms in the air. Which stopwatch is away? It's a vibe check. You know who did ride and dropped himself? He actually did the dirty work on 5%? Adam Yates. Adam Richard did it. And Adam Richard didn't throw his hands up on TV. But yeah, Almeida should have killed everybody here. The problem for Almeida is he was too good a teammate last year in the Tour de France, etc. And Ayuso, got the Giro because it didn't work.
Almeida's being penalized for being too kind, but I think in the long term, he might actually reap the benefits of it. This Tour de France, I actually think he can still podium the Tour de France with being a domestique for Pogacar. I think that's a possibility. And if that happens, then he can get that role next year where he can even do 2 Grand Tours in the way that an Ayuso did this one, for example. So I do see that possibility. Juan Ayuso, like Del Toro comes to the forefront right now. First Grand Tour as a GC leader, steps up and delivers a podium. That doesn't mean he's going to do that again next year or the year after, but that shows the potential to win a Grand Tour in the future and to podium Grand Tours in the future. And for me, that puts him in UAE's eyes as, okay, this is our next prodigy. We need to take care of this guy. He comes across a bit like Pogacar. I know people don't like the comparisons, but as a rider type, how would you compare him to Pogacar in 2019, 2020?
Yeah, pretty similar.
I think so as well, actually. Like, in terms of long climbing, I've got question marks, but I also had that question mark with Pogacar back in the day.
Yeah, like positioning-wise, he seemed to be there when it was getting hectic, even without team helping him. That's what reminds me the most, is that when all the shit was going on in this Giro, somehow he was in the right space or the lucky spot. But if you're in the lucky spot consistently enough and not getting caught behind, then it's not luck anymore. So that's what reminded me the most, but the comparison between the two. But yeah, it's difficult. But I think Adam Yates, he has to be. They're not giving Adam Yates Grand Tour leadership over the young guys anymore. He's got the new contract. I mean, maybe he ends up being stronger than one of the young guys, but they're going to go with the young guys. So yeah, it's Almeida, Del Toro, Ayuso. Almeida and Ayuso can't do the same race, Grand Tour, so that's a problem. So then it is, because then that means every year they're forced to do Ayuso Giro, Pog Tour, Almeida Vuelta, and then Almeida does one as a domestique.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you also got to keep in mind that Pogacar is at the age where he's going to do 2 Grand Tours per season. I would expect that to happen this year. You seemingly disagree?
I don't think he'll do the Vuelta.
I think he should. I think he's at the point in his career where I want to see him in both Grand Tours. And I think it would be good for the sport for him to do it in the first place.
Giannetti was saying something about Isaac can't do the Vuelta to give space to the others. That leads me to think that Almeida will do the Vuelta as a thank you for the Tour.
I think they're going to be there, both of them. That's how I perceive that. Nonetheless, you could be right. You could be right. Now, for me, Adam Yates is new Micah. Is that a weird thing to say?
Yeah, no, it is. That will be his role.
So, and after this Grand Tour, it's crazy to say that Ayuso, who 4 years ago podiumed La Vuelta, is now set under Del Toro, but that's the way the game works.
Yeah.
And I think this is, like, contractually, he's stuck at UAE Team Emirates until 2028. We know that contracts can move. We've heard that a few times in the last couple of years in the sport of cycling, and we've seen one move in Primoz Roglic. So I am of the opinion that both the sport, Ayuso, and maybe UAE might be better off if Ayuso's moving away to a different team.
Ayuso and Movistar would go hard in the Tour de France. They got the new money in. The billionaire bought a minority stake, a large minority stake in the team. That would go hard. Ivan Romeo, Ayuso, and then Enrique can focus on what's really important, which is the Vuelta. He doesn't have to fight in Tour de France breakaways, waste his time with that nonsense. So, yeah, Ayuso, and also Almeida's out of contract end of 26, Benji. And so I think one of them has to go. Unless Almeida gets it, the money is just too good, and he gets still promised to lead one Grand Tour a year. And listen, Almeida, results-wise, is having his best season of his career. He's still improving results-wise at 26. He won Romandy and Basque, stage of Paris-Nice, dunking on Vingegaard. And so it's not like he's not performing and not winning. But if he's not
choking.
In Valencia, he choked hard, of course.
Yeah, but it's Valencia, you know?
I still got that in him.
In Paris-Nice, did he choke there?
Bro, to Romney, Lenny had him in a blender. Paris-Nice, he got sick. I don't know why they keep sending him to a race where he gets sick and then the crosswinds is not his thing. But Almeida's having a great season, what I'm saying. So, but he's out of contract the soonest. And then that's in his hands. Does he go to Trek? Does he go to...
Mate, I said it a year ago. Joao Almeida at Little Trek would bang.
Yeah, and also, yeah. And he's with he's with Pedersen's agency, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's an option. And I think that's...
Who's Juan Ayuso with? Because he's not with the Scarrera, right?
I swear Ayuso's dad just signed him up for life.
We've seen that happen before.
Do you know any other rider with that?
Remco Ayuso pool?
Luke says it's his dad, so that always works well. You always have the best clauses in the contract, etc. So yeah, that's something to bear in mind. Okay, let's move on to Visma Lab, Benji. Does this Giro, you got in the notes, does this Giro d'Italia change how we feel about Visma Lab for the Tour de France? It does optics-wise. You're now bringing into the squad the rider that won the last Grand Tour, Simon Yates, who maybe before the season or after Catalunya, you're looking at like, what's Simon Yates going to do for Vingegaard in the Tour? Now it looks a whole lot different.
That is true. There is no assurance, though, that Simon Yates will be at the level of this Giro at the Tour de France. That's what you hope for, because then you've got a really good super domestique for Vingegaard or backup leader, worst case scenario. But I don't see Simon Yates on the level to remotely compete with Pogacar. And I'm not sure that will work out if you use a backup leader. But it's a backup leader if Vingegaard, if anything happens to him, you know? But also Wout van Aert a bit. If we look at Wout van Aert's Tour de France participation, I'm not sure whether it's a certainty, but on PCS it says that he's lined up for the Tour de France. So I'm looking at Wout van Aert Giro d'Italia, and these were the signs of like, okay, Wout van Aert's domestique work, it's still on point. Him on San Valentino, him on Colle del Finestre, he shows that he's still got it in him 22 style. The way he rode that Tour de France 2022, he shows that he can still give that support to a Jonas Vingegaard. Is he going to dominate the green jersey in the same way that he did in 2022? I don't believe that. But I do believe he can be a valuable asset for Jonas Vingegaard at this Grand Tour. And that is a feeling I was doubting about before the Giro d'Italia, if I'm honest.
And not just sort of the climbing and everything, but just even the lead-outs during the Giro improved. The first sprint stage, he was nowhere. They fucked up a corner a roundabout into the circuit. Visma never got together in 30 Ks. Van Aert was stuck in the blender. And then yesterday, it was a textbook lead-out. Now, it was a bit easier, but even just... He seems to be more at ease doing all the versatile things he can do. That's obviously a big upgrade compared to maybe what we saw in, the start of the Giro. It's a big upgrade on what we saw at the start of the Giro before the Siena stage. Olav Koy, Benji says... We'll
discuss him in the weekly, my friend. Because transfer news, you know?
Okay.
There's some rumors.
I don't want to steal from the weekly. But yeah, it's... I feel like Visma kind of got away with a bank heist here. And they did, and they didn't like, you know what I mean? Like, they didn't sign a super expensive Roglic. And listen, Roglic still won a Vuelta for Bora. He still won the Vuelta for them and Catalunya, etc. But they kind of did what Quickstep did with Landa. This was the Landa signing where, and it's an experienced GC guy who's not been really on the podium level the last.
I love how you say day in this situation. Day, Visma Lease bike.
Look, you see how good Landa was?
Yeah, true.
Look how good Wout Poels was and has been.
Yeah.
Just because, listen, if a guy could never sprint, when he goes over 30, he's got no sprint to lose. Yeah. That's the theory. They weren't explosive in the first place. It is basics like science.
So you're saying Romain Bardet and Pinot out of retirement?
Dude, Thibaut Pinot, listen, buddy, if you want a contract, anytime, any place, Thibaut Pinot is so good. he'll get the first bike fit. He'll get his first bike fit ever, which is good. So he won't have back pain anymore. And yeah, he'll get to eat carbohydrate. Yeah, Luke's saying first he'll get 38 centimeter bars. You're like, what are these? He'll go like 5Ks quicker on the flat. So Pinot actually unbelievable talent, like physically unbelievable talent and engine. But what was I saying? Yeah, Quickstep showed with Landa. I mean, he was 5th in the Tour de France whilst helping Remco. He was 2nd in all these World Tour 1 weeks when he led behind Poggi and Catalunya. He probably would have podiumed this Giro. Like, it goes to show these older GC guys, they're not the flashy Del Toros out of Tour de l'Avenir, but I think it's nice that a non-Pog, non-Remco, actually I'd like Remco to win, a non-Roglic, non-Pog, non-Jonas won a Grand Tour again.
Yep, I think so as well. It's also just good for the sport, you know? Like, I don't necessarily... It's undeniable that this Giro was good for the sport.
Yeah,
like,
or if Carapaz had won. Yeah, the viewership figures are really strong.
There's lots of reasons why. But on top of that, also the fact that a Mexican kid showed up and brought a whole new audience. Yes, there are already existing Mexican cycling fans. I'm not neglecting you. But there's so much hype in Mexico, apparently, about Isaac Del Toro, to the point that they, at the start of the Giro, didn't have a broadcast of the Giro. And by the end of the Giro, they had 2 free channels showing the Giro d'Italia in Mexico. Crazy. I'm sorry, but that's epic. And dude already has 300K followers on Instagram. Like, Central America, South America, unreal in terms of supporting sports idols. And I think that's a great thing for the sport.
I think, and on that note, it would have been fantastic. If Carapaz won, I also think it might have even been better for the sport.
Really?
A better signal, yeah. Because Visma Lab is still, last year wasn't very good. It's still, won 3 Grand Tours in 2023 and one of the superpowers of the sport. I think if EF had shown that they could take a GC rider from Ineos, they could afford him, and he's not Pog, not Roglic, not Jonas, and they won a Grand Tour with Carapaz, I think that would have also been a really good signal that it's possible, almost for anyone to still win a Grand Tour if you're smart, pick the right guy, right plan.
Can we talk about this for a second? We've spoken about how UAE lost this Giro d'Italia, but could EF have won this Giro d'Italia? Because there was a lot of discussion about how they took Colle del Finestre on. Can I be honest? I don't even hate how they started it. Yeah. At the end of the day, they started Colle del Finestre. They rode all out with Mikel Honoré, who rode fantastically in this Giro, by the way.
And
as a domestique most of all. Rafferty, you're right. Steinhaus was pretty strong throughout the Grand Tour.
Steinhaus disappointed me, actually.
Really?
I think he was stronger in the breaks last year.
I agree, but it does come across better in breakaways than as a domestique, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I agree with my own point there.
They had him pulling on the flat before Finestre.
That made no sense to me.
Well, I think it just... I agree that EF... If I was EF, maybe I would have done a little bit differently on Finestre, where Van Aert, if you don't get a rider in the breakaway in your EF, then you have to then treat Van Aert as your ally. And you got to hope that you get to a situation where Yates is with Carapaz And for whatever reason, Visma just decide, all right, let's just pull Yates into second. He's not dropping Carapaz. And Van Aert's there, use him or not. And Van Aert somehow drags Carapaz to the win. But I think I like the idea of launching it at the bottom. The problem was you're making Del Toro follow you in his time window. Let's say we worry about Del Toro on the long climbs, but this was a relatively easy stage before, and you're turning it into a 10-minute make or break effort. Carapaz had to drop him basically in the first 10 minutes of that climb with that lead out. I think if you go a bit deeper, a bit slower, you maybe increase the chance with one big attack. You go with the whole team, maybe 15 minutes. Then with the Cepeda, 2 minutes. Probably still wouldn't have worked. But
I have a counterpoint to you, though, in a sense. As in, first of all, I agree that they should have had a rider in the breakaway in the first place. If Visma Lease can do it, there was the opportunity for EF to do it, and I didn't really see that in break formation. That would already been a big step. But on top of that, I agree on the climb. Well, I'm not sure I agree. It's like, the way I see what EF did is, they smashed the bottom of the climb. They put all the UAE domestiques in Narnia, in doing so making it a 1v1 between Carapaz and Del Toro, and on paper that 1v1 for a 1 hour climb should result in Carapaz dropping Del Toro on paper before that stage. That's my assumption before that stage. I agree that...
That's what I think they thought. They thought Del Toro would get killed on Finestra. I kind of did too.
My problem is, on the climb, we had 2 discussion points. So, Del Toro, you mentioned it before, he's a one-pace climber, as in, he prefers a climb to happen at the same tempo the entire time without stop-starts. But on the other hand, he has the potential vulnerability of the fatigue of a 1 hour climb cracking him by the end. And I think Carapaz ended up stuck in between of both.
Yeah. Yates made it a problem for him.
In the first portion of the climb, Carapaz hard-paced a little bit, not the craziest tempo, but enough of a tempo to put all the UAE domestiques more into Narnia than just exploding. Carapaz's initial tempo in the first 10 minutes of the climb to me seemed like, okay, I'm going to build this gap towards the UAE domestique so I can start playing with Del Toro, and I can start playing without the scare of potentially UAE domestiques coming back. That's what I felt like that strategy was.
Yep, agree.
And then afterwards, he goes into start-stop mode, but then starts riding a bit too fast. And
there's his mistake.
That's where he lost me.
There's his mistake. Why does he start closing Yates immediately on the first Yates attacks? Isn't your plan, like I said, Van Aert's ahead? Okay, we don't have a rider in, but Van Aert, he can be my rider. Yates, first time Yates goes, don't spend any bullet, sit on Del Toro, save, let Yates get 15 seconds, and then try to drop a real hammer. Now, he did do that later. But I feel like he spent bullets solving Yates a few times for Del Toro where I didn't understand it. And like, would Del Toro have... Probably Del Toro doesn't pace, and he says, I'll let McNulty come back, or Micah come back, or Yates come back. And
well, then Del Toro loses the Giro anyway.
Exactly. So I feel like that's a minor mistake. We shouldn't underrate how good Yates' performance was on Finestra.
True.
Carapaz was aggressive.
Do you think if Yates does that with the other 2 in the wheel, they get over the top in his wheel? Or do they crack towards the top?
I think Carapaz could have followed, yeah.
I don't think Del Toro could have followed the tempo of Simon Yates on that climb.
I think Carapaz could have followed. But that's a very big if. And the reality is maybe Yates, if they were in the wheel, he would have stopped again, hit him with another hammer, and they couldn't have followed.
Because how influential is draft on a climb like this? It's like 9% roughly for the entire climb.
Like
Gravel makes it slower. No, 0.1?
No, let me check.
What per kilo?
0.1, yeah, what per kilo? Let me check what Del Toro did. It might be less than that. It's not that big.
What is it on a normal climb, if we compare?
For Del Toro, it was like, 0.05, which is, Jesus. Go to some math, 0.05 times 60. It's like 3 watts. It's it's psychological though. Like, no, they've done studies. They've done studies on the very steep gradients to show that you still go faster with someone ahead of you. So that
can confirm. Swift races.
It's true. It's true. But Yeah, I think it's also very easy to say, they would have just followed Yates. Yates was also flying, so
Yeah.
I can't criticize Carapaz how he rode this Giro. He attacked. EF were aggressive. He went for that stage win, got that stage win. He went for it on Lamotte. I think, Carapaz went for it. Hard to criticize him. He says he has no regrets. I think that's correct. Anyone in
and
the
he
top?
podiumed a Grand Tour for the first time since 2022, so he should be happy. The team should be happy. I think it's great for EF, especially with the 2 stage wins of Asgreen and Carapaz.
They had a good Giro, EF. They had a really good Giro. And you're in it to win it on the final GC stage. I mean, that's kind of what you'd hope for at the start of the race. Just to run through some other narratives from the top 10. Derek G, his best Grand Tour result, 4th, including losing that time on stage 1. It was a Giro that suited him with not many mountaintop finishes, I would say, but he also climbed excellently. Clearly the 4th best climber left in the race. Caruso, a bit of an anonymous 5th, but did save it with Tiberi collapsing for Bahrain. Although I think Bahrain didn't have a good Giro at all. They didn't win a stage. They weren't really close to winning a stage. And they brought no sprinter. I think this is not a great Grand Tour for them, actually.
I think top 5 is a great result for Caruso.
Yeah.
But it's not what they came for with the team. Tiberi came here to podium the race, so I agree with you.
Yeah.
I do want to bring it to Redbull BORA hansgrohe for a bit. Like, we've seen Primoz Roglic crash multiple times, abandoning this Giro. Not all those crashes are bad luck. Whatever people say, it's not true. That's not the case. Half of them are bad luck, half of them are his own fault. If you look at Primoz Roglic, 55% DNF rate in his last 9 Grand Tours. Going to the Tour de France, how do you approach that Tour de France knowing that he might crash out? Do you use Lipovic as backup leader or co-leader?
I think if you Red Bull BORA hansgrohe, you have to keep Lipovic in GC. You can't take the Pellizzari approach to having Lipovic wait for Roglic, because what if Lipovic could podium this Tour de France? I don't think he will, but I think it helps to have, say Roglic is behind, it always helps to just have a guy, if he's in the front, sitting on, not helping, maybe it helps the second group come back, and then you actually need the other guys to be around Roglic more, and that's the second point, Benji. I mean, I remember we were in Tirana in Albania and Luke was pointing out Roglic in the sprint stages and we all agreed, we're like, he's not going to make it through the Giro riding like this. He will crash. And Roglic is still, to this day, searching for that perfect position of safety that he cannot maintain and cannot achieve, and he puts himself in the blender where he consistently is the most dangerous part of the peloton, like P15 or 20 without teammates around you on the sides when there's a huge squeeze or fight, and it's happened with Colbrelli. Roglic needs to accept he can't do it. Sit at the back, Adam Yates style.
Just to sketch the situation you're talking about, what we're talking about is in every sprint stage, we see Red Bull BORA hansgrohe trying to keep Roglic in a position at the front of the group, especially in that first few stages, the sketchiest stages, descents before the finish line, versatile sprint stages. That's where shit can go wrong. And there we see Roglic not being able to hold that position. So he's in this constant loop of losing that position and moving himself back up to his teammates. Losing that position, moving himself back up to his teammates, sometimes being helped by Hindley in the process in the moving up part. So credits to Hindley there, because he saved Roglic quite a few times in that process. But the constant moving up process and moving down process, that's the washing machine effect that can endanger Roglic and cause crashes. Because that's exactly how he crashed in the Tour de France 2021, the one where everybody was blaming Colbrelli for shoving him out of the road. At the end of the day, Roglic is also at fault for being in that position in the first place, because that's the effect we're talking about. If you can't hold the position, it makes it even more dangerous in the first place. And that's the difference with other GC riders that can hold that position in the first place. That being said, you're saying you should stay at the back with a buffer. There's never an ideal situation for positioning. Landa might have been in that position we're talking about and crashed out on stage 1. But at the end of the day, it is objectively safer to be away from the washing machine effect than completely in it. Right?
You're either in the wheel Simon Yates was in that corner in Slovenia, where you're P5 behind your 4 teammates, or give a buffer. And listen, riders were out of position there, didn't crash, but lost time on that stage. But Roglic has lost his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. His last 9 Grand Tours, he's DNF'd 5 of them. Yep. And then maybe crashes affected. Oh, no. Yeah. And then the ones he finished, he's won or was not beaten by any rider on another team in the Vuelta 23.
I can hear some people advocating, but okay, if he does finish the Tour de France, he's got a huge win rate of his Grand Tours. That win rate does not apply to the Tour de France. That applies to La Vuelta and the Giro. The Giro and La Vuelta are not the Tour de France. That's a higher level, and Tadej fucking Pogacar is there. So you're not in that same position. You can't just look at the numbers and apply that to the Tour de France from the Vuelta and the Giro. So I agree. They need to go to the Giro d'Italia with Florian Lipovic as co-leader, backup leader, whatever that position is. Maybe in the same way that they planned for Hindley in this race that we didn't end up seeing. That's what they said initially, that Hindley might have been backup leader. Pellizzari ended up showing that he could have had that role to begin with. I don't blame them for not having Pellizzari as co-leader from the start, because I didn't see this level on stage 1 yet.
And we'll see what the Tour de France team is, because I think they're going to try to play the game, Benji. They're going to be like, okay, UAE and Visma, they're going to drag race, and we need to be there, and we need to have Roglic being in the best position.
Yeah.
It doesn't work, man. It doesn't work. He loses the wheel, and then he gets put in the blender, and he crashes. And if you want Roglic to get the best possible result in this tour, you have to keep him not crashing. And which is for every GC rider, to be honest, but for him especially important.
Hot take.
Yeah. So they're bringing Van Poppel. The provisional was Van Poppel, Vlasov, Tratnik, Martinez, Roglic. I assume Pithi maybe as well. Yep. Lascano, don't know where he's been. Do they bring should they bring a sprinter?
I don't know. Jordi Mees has had a good start of the season, but I also don't expect him to be competitive at a Tour de France sprint stage. Yes, he's won the Champs-Élysées stage back in the day. He's not going to do that after Montmartre. Maybe, actually. Depends on how hard Montmartre is ridden. But I don't necessarily have that confidence in Mees either. And Welsford, he can't do the Tour de France, in my opinion, at current level.
First week's too hard, yeah. Okay, that's Red Bull. So Pellizzari kind of saved it. But we'll see, and then we'll see how they go in the Tour de France. But yeah, they need to obviously have more riders around Roglic. We'll see how Lipovic goes. I think he's doing the Dauphiné, and he was last year podium Dauphiné. No,
against the big guns.
I made that up. He came second.
You made that up.
I made it up. He came second.
We'll pretend it happened in your universe.
I swear Lipovic was good in some race.
Paris-Nice,
yeah. Ineos, I think Bernal, it was good to see him aggressive. Aronson fell out of GC, but then kind of hung around in GC, then fell out of GC again. I think the gravel stage they were cooking, and the mech of Aronson was really shit, which was unfortunate. They missed the no sprinter, and actually, Bernd Turner came third on one stage, but they do miss a sprinter.
Well, Juan retired the day before the Giro.
Yeah. He did. So, I don't think, they probably didn't bring, what's his name? Axel Laurence.
Could have been good for the opening stages.
Yeah, Axel Laurence. Is Francesco Bussato faster than Laurence?
No.
I don't think so either. So, but then the Tour de France. Aular. Yeah, Aular, but also Laurence is French. The Tour de France is in France, and there's some good stages for him. The problem is, Van der Poel, all these guys are there, so it's going to be tougher to win. I think it was good to see Bernal like this. This does not make me think he's any closer to podium the Grand Tour in the future.
I agree. I'm also in that page. This was not the highest level Giro d'Italia I've ever seen, especially in the first 17 days, I would say it wasn't. And then I look at Egan Bernal, and he's 7th in this race. Climbing was his limit in week 3. That's where it ended up being a problem. Tactics were fun and all. We did ask a few times, okay, they're attacking in the middle of a stage. Where is this going? Because there's no follow-up after this climb. I did love seeing that, but in some stages it did backfire. Arensman, I think he crashed on. Was it the Valentino stage?
He had some crashes, issues. The stage 1 issue is normal, and then
sacrificed himself a bit.
And was working for Bernal. Bernal also crashed, I think. So maybe his Finestra, because on Finestra he lost like 7 minutes to Simon Yates and got dropped straight away. Maybe the crash was why that happened, and that wasn't his real level. It's possible. But maybe it is his level. I don't know. But I don't think... To me, I don't... Yeah, you don't expect Bernal to be back. Like, maybe at the Vuelta he is.
Yeah.
I think the best stage for me was the Tagliacozzo stage. That was sick. When he attacked, and he was like really attacking and putting guys on the limit. That was really, really great to see. But
Strade stage.
Strade stage was also... Yeah, he was also really good. Maybe a bit too generous with his pulls. Q365, Moschetti... His highlight was trying to put Coy through the barriers and then otherwise wasn't competitive. Pidcock finishes behind Nicola Prudhomme on GC after staying in GC the whole race and never gotten a breakaway.
Near invisible in this Grand Tour. Yeah, he had maybe a podium in week 1, but I'm sorry. You're Tom Pidcock. Like, what's expected of Tom Pidcock in this race is, first of all, I do expect him to be able to top 10 a Giro like this. In the first place. That's my opinion. And on top of that, if he doesn't do that, then the other factor is, okay, he can win multiple stages here. And Pidcock is expected to win a stage at this Giro d'Italia. So, one of the most disappointing performances of this Grand Tour, I would say.
Yeah, just because it seemed like, we were like, why is he doing this? Like, yeah. Nicola Prudhomme, all due respect, he's not better than Pidcock. I don't think. So...
Did Q46.5 get pressured into bringing Pidcock here in the same way that Tudor didn't get pressured?
I don't know. But no, RCS don't... Isn't there the worst case scenario the way he rode? Wouldn't they want Pidcock in the break doing the Alpe d'Huez stuff?
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah. Anyway.
Not much to say.
He's doing the Vuelta later this year. Yeah, that's probably the worst thing is there's just not much to say there. Any other winners and losers out of this Grand Tour, Benji? I say Little Trek are big winners, literally. Even though Ciccone abandoned, I don't know where Ciccone would have finished. But yeah, any other big winners? And I guess Cofidis are a big loser. They're now in the relegation zone. Picnic and Astana are ahead of them because Max Poole also took some points from both the stage, I think, and GC because he finished actually reasonably high on Sestriere. I didn't see Cofidis all race, I got to say.
There's a bunch of teams that we just didn't see all race, and that brings me to the point we bring up so many times after every Grand Tour. No, we don't bring it up that much, but if every single Grand Tour, 2 of the 4 teams or 3 of the 4 teams that we don't see throughout that Grand Tour are French World Tour teams, then there's too many French World Tour teams. Because one good French World Tour team is better than 3 average ones. Below average ones, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the highest... Looking now, the highest GC position, Nicola Prudhomme on 15th. Yeah, Decathlon had Prudhomme, they didn't actually have a good Giro. Like, Bennett almost didn't top 10 a single sprint.
Yep. Prudhomme saved it.
Prudhomme saved it with the stage win. They only got to survive from that break. And he finishes 15th in GC. Svestad Bardseng was okay for a young Norwegian on Arkea. I mean, he's 22 years old. He was decent in some of the climbing stages. But yeah, Germani was very strong getting in breaks. Gaudu obviously shouldn't have probably started the race with his shape. And in the end, it was not worth it. But yeah, it wasn't good. Quickstep also not good. Lamperti and Manier didn't do what I thought they'd do, although Manier was Lamperti did come 5th yesterday. But yeah, Landa crashed out. Stage 1. It's not good.
Good though.
Garofoli was solid. That's not good, but I expected Manier, to be honest, to be way better.
Yeah. But I'm really happy with the form I saw in Garofoli. Nice to see that he got extended by the team. Can't wait to see what he does in the future because I swear the first time I saw this dude was when I was playing Pro Cycling Manager on the Sunweb Dev team. Does he come from there? Garofoli?
I think he's older.
Really? I'm checking it.
No, he's
Gianmarco Garofoli.
Yeah, somewhere dipped. I confused him with he was on Astana last year. I confused him with some other like 25-year-old Italian Pacenti on the dev team.
Antonio Pacenti is dead, so it's not him.
Nah, it's some other one.
Thomas Pacenti.
Yeah, sure. The other teams I thought had a good Giro were, what's their name? Jacob Alula, 2 stage wins with Plapp and Harper, both their first wins in Europe, or their first big wins in Europe rather, first World Tour wins. That had to be a good result, including, the Queen stage for Chris Harper. Movistar, they were all right. I expect a bit more from Jefferson, Cepeda. Rubio was solid. They'll take the top 10. It's not a disaster, but it's solid. That would have been their goal. And Astana had maybe the best Giro relative to their goals of anybody. Winning stages, take Maglia Rosa, stages, KOM, a boatload of points.
Track I'd put higher.
Yeah. Astana then next though. Astana, they did what they came for. So they basically secured their World Tour license already for next year whilst getting wins and the Maglia Rosa for a day with Ulisse. So any other riders that stand out to you? Last chance, Benji, riders where you want to give a hat tip or a non-hat tip?
I want to give a hat tip to Florian Stork, who was pretty damn strong in breakaways. I enjoyed his presence in those breakaways, but I also want to take the opportunity to do some short self-promo. I've got a Giro d'Italia team review tier list coming up on my YouTube channel, Benji Naesen, in the next 24 hours after recording this, so maybe after you watch this podcast, go check it out. But what's your rider?
Oh, I didn't really have one.
You can't ask me the question and not have one yourself, buddy.
Stork's a good one. Stork was really, really solid.
You can't just copy my pick.
I think Edward Plancart.
Yes.
I mean, Vacek's the obvious one, but I think Edward Plancart in the first 2 weeks was so good. Where he comes on the gravel stage is outstanding amongst the GC riders, and his lead outs on the versatile stages were, on the Matera stage 5, he was unbelievable. So I like to shout out.
Is he the new Uruk-hai?
Nah, he was already Uruk-hai last year because he didn't do any Cobble Classic ever, and then he fucking did Paris-Roubaix as a fill-in and shredded the whole race with Kielich and Riesebeck. And I'm like, Who are you, dude, to be doing this? So yeah, he was already that. And this year he did Flanders and he saved MVDP's ass when he had the crash. He brought him back. And then on the gravel stage, he was good. He can do lead outs, so he was great this Giro. Final ranking, Benji, I would rate this Giro 8.5 out of 10.
Okay. I was also leaning towards 8.5. Epic ending. That's what stays in mind. Love it. And I'll keep it in my head for a while. But K1 classification was a one-man thing.
Yeah.
Was just Fortunato and Scaroni, so there was no battle there. Ciclamino, no battle at all. Which, it's great to see Mats Pedersen from the way he does, but for Ciclamino, I want competition, Yeah. So that's the one thing I'm missing about the Grand Tour, those two things. On top
and not
of
just
that,
there was no competition, it's like no other team tried in both those competitions. Groves didn't even go for any intermediates at all. It's like, but you're a versatile sprinter. What if Pedersen... And no one was sprinting Fortunato, apart from Tarozzi, God bless him, but like Picnic didn't say, okay, Bardet's out of GC, let's fight Fortunato for this, and maybe you still lose, but there was just no fight.
It's because Fortunato and Pedersen already took control of those classifications in week 1, and the competition thought, okay, that's unbeatable.
Yeah.
And I think that's the effect. It's the same effect that Wout van Aert had in the 2022 Tour de France on the green jersey. It caused the other sprinters to basically stop sprinting after week 1.
Except Niels Eekhoff.
Except Niels Eekhoff. I'm very happy for Dries de Bon, by the way, that he got his Inter-Giro classification or whatever the fuck that's called.
Is that why he pulled Carapaz on Finestra?
He should.
Because Van Aert flicked him on the Inter-Giro sprint?
Why is Wout van Aert trying to beat this man? Yes, I know it's because he can move up to 3rd place in the green jersey classification, actually. That's the reason, by the way.
Oh, was it?
Like, I don't know if that's the reason Wout van Aert sprinted, but that actually happened as a consequence of that sprint.
Oh, really? Okay. But But
So it
yeah,
actually had an effect on the points classification.
I was like,
throughout.
maybe the bond is like they. Yeah, like, I don't know.
But Dries, I don't know. I don't care about that Inter-Giro classification, but I'm happy for him. I hope he got a. I don't know what he gets for it. Hopefully, some bathroom or something, or some shower.
Prosciutto. Yeah, like a ham.
Bruschetta.
Okay, yeah. So what's your final rating? Around 8.
8.5 as well.
Yeah.
My initial feeling after Col Finistere is like, oh, 9, but rationally it's an 8 because I missed an extra mountaintop finish.
Yeah,
Would have had some epic mountaintop finish on Zoncolan, maybe. I don't know. I would have been epic. Then again, that might have tied up the race a little bit.
I missed a versatile sprinter challenging Pedersen, and I don't just mean Van Aert coming. I mean, I would have wanted, if Paul Manier on the uphill sprint finish, if he steps off Pedersen and beats him there after Pedersen's been winning all week, then it's like, wow, that's incredible. New star is born. You just missed that a little bit. That's the only knock on the race. I did enjoy a lot of these stages.
You missed a Binion.
Yeah, Mr. Binny, like fighting Pedersen. So
Champollion sucked.
That was terrible. But that also was parkour design. So I enjoyed it. I like the gravel stage. I'll remember a lot of these stages. So maybe that's not true. Maybe I'll forget them in 3 weeks. But we'll certainly remember
in 3
the
weeks. I'll be like, who on the gravel stage? And you'll be like, Mathieu van der Poel?
It's hard to say why I enjoyed it so much more than previous years. I don't know why. I just
because of the friends we made along the way. And that's where we want to thank our audience. Come on.
Yeah, thanks for listening to the Giro d'Italia coverage from us all throughout the last 3 weeks. We're taking a break of like a day, and then we're going to do the weekly show. So there you go. That's our thank you to you. We won't stop. Then there's the Dauphiné and the Tour de France, obviously, coming up. But yeah, it was a really, really good Grand Tour. I think the organisers will be happy. I think a lot of the teams got what they came for, and I really enjoyed it. Next year it's going to start in Australia. That's great. So we can all go to the start there.
Is it actually going to start in Australia?
No. No way.
It can't, right? Because it can only go to a non-attached country every 4 years.
Every 2 years, I think.
Oh, every 2 years. Okay.
But what they could do is, what you do is, you make 3 Giro stages and connect it to the TDU and be like, these 3 stages at the end of January, they're the first 3 stages of the Giro, and then you just have 170 rest days, and then the 4th stage begins in May in Italy.
Possibly, or if as a Grand Tour you're restricted by the fact that you can only do a non-attached country every few years, you annex a village in Australia. In doing so, making Australia the border of Italy, and then you can go to Australia whenever you want with the race.
I mean, yeah, that's certainly possible. I mean, I think there's parts of Victoria where like
village like Melbourne or something.
Yeah, there's parts in Victoria near Melbourne where there's like literally half the people there have like a 2nd, 3rd generation Italian. So
yeah,
maybe do it there. Okay, that's
like
our
Sydney.
idea. Or just don't start a Grand Tour on the other side of the world. Is the other option.
I think that's a good option, actually.
I think that might be the easier option. Thanks for listening. As always, we do really appreciate all your comments, coverage, and support. Really, it's after 6 years to have such a great Grand Tour. We both feel the energy and the passion for it. So thanks a lot. And yeah, we'll see you with the weekly show coming up shortly. That was the Giro. Ciao, ciao, ciao.